I agreed with Pauline Hanson the other day. First time in probably a while. I'll say on the record, I'm not a One Nation mouthpiece.
Yep.
I agreed with one point she made, and it was about monoculture. Now, many people get the idea of monoculture misconstrued as we're just going to have toast and Vegemite and Bunnings Sambos, right? The idea of monoculture is not you lose your identity or you lose who you are. It's that if you come to this country, like my grandfather did, my papa, who's now passed away at 101, right? And he rammed this into my head. He came here and he did everything that he could to be part of the Australian culture. He didn't come here and say, righto, I'm the big boss now. I'm the Cypriot Greek. You're going to live like me. Good luck back in Gundagai. Good luck happening. You know, and even my yaya on my mum's side, she's 97. And I asked her, I said, when you came to, no, actually, she was the first Greek born in Tasmania, or the first family, right? I said, so when your family came here, like what did you feel like you owed Australia? She said, we owe Australia everything.
Everything.
I said, what did you expect out of Australia? She said, nothing. And this is the problem, my friend. The problem is that we are now filling with people that expect everything out of Australia and want to give zero back.
The opposite. You're right.
And this is the problem. So when people call me racist for saying that I want better vetted migration, I'm not sitting here saying that different races, ethnicities, religions are the problem. The problem is that we are accepting people that want to give nothing back to Australia.
Yes.
That is the crux of our issue.
I mean, you're a great example of it. You were born in Colombia. I know were you a couple months old when you came here? Is that what you said?
2 months old.
2 months old. So you've come here and you made a comment about people saying that you're not Australian, which I'd be interested to hear about in a minute. But your parents as well, your parents are Cypriot Greeks.
Yep.
They've come into this country. So you're not anti-immigration, it seems. I'm the same, by the way. I was born here in Australia, but my parents came here from Lebanon.
Yep.
So, and people ask me all the time, they're like, so I don't get it. Like, are you anti-immigration? Or I'm not anti-immigration. I'm grateful that Australia accepted my parents here into this country. Very grateful for it. But what is your perspective on it? What is your perspective on immigration in Australia?
I think at this point in time, man, we need to really assess the people that we have here.
Yep.
We need to assess the people we are letting in.
Yep.
And I feel as though it would be irresponsible of our government to allow the same volume to continue to come. Even if it was halved, it would be irresponsible because you have so much disharmony within the Australian population around this issue. So much. People are pissed off, right?
Yeah.
And the only way to solve your own people getting pissed off is to focus on them. Stop focusing on propping up your GDP on paper by bringing people in.
Yeah.
Per capita, I believe we're currently in a recession, right?
Yes.
But they want to bring more in to prop it up. Oh, it's all good, smooth sailing. It's not, right? Just bite the bullet. Give us the pain because we are sick and tired of people coming here and disrespecting what they can get here. Yes. And that is fact, right? So am I pro-immigration? Am I against immigration? I think I sit in the middle.
Yep.
But it needs to be, see, this is the problem. It is not that simple of a thing to stand on. You can't say, yeah, I'm pro or I'm against because there are so many issues inside of it that you need to discuss. So if we had immigration that was vetted properly,
yes.
If we expected these individuals to speak proper English, if we expected them to give back to the Australian way of life, if we expected them to assimilate to the way of life, these are all great things.
Spot on. Yep.
Right? Now, if they don't do these things, why should we let them in?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I also believe on the flip side of this coin, if we have let individuals in and they do not do these things and they start committing crime, you go back to where you came from.
Absolutely.
Why should we, the taxpayer, the Australian citizen, pay for these individuals within our systems? What for? Why do we have so many people that can come here and get instant benefits when, example, my papa or your family? Bro, imagine them going to Centrelink back then.
Yeah.
Get out.
Get out. Yeah,
no
that's
way.
right.
Get
yeah,
out.
Yeah.
You know? So I believe, look, at this point in time, there's no simple fix, right? If you cut immigration, we're straight into a recession.
Yes.
Straight into a recession. And there's pain, a lot of pain, right?
Yeah.
I feel as though many people don't understand that point.
Yeah, sure.
I
That's
feel
a good point.
Many
yeah.
people are very emotionally charged around this, but they don't look at the implications of what happens if we do cut immigration. If we were to stop it tomorrow,
Yep.
Australia's in pain.
In pain.
Big
Yeah.
pain, right?
Yeah.
But there are many people that believe that it's a pain worth experiencing because we fix Australia again.
Yes.
And my personal opinion is somewhere in between. I think you want to find that happy medium so you don't fall into a full-blown depression, ruin everything. But we still need to definitely focus on our own backyard. An analogy I've used many a times, Australians are so good at looking over the fence and forgetting there's a crater in your backyard.
Yeah.
It's what we always do.
Yeah.
We've always done it. But right now is the time to look at that crater and say, holy moly, we need to fill that back up, because if we don't, that's going to get bigger and we're going to step down off the fence paling and we're not coming back.
I think you touched on something, like you hit the nail on the head, because you're right. Either it's kind of a partisan issue almost now, where it's like either people are anti-immigration or they're pro-immigration. And then that kind of middle part is interesting. And I think that's where I think that's where the solution lies, because what you're saying is don't stop the people from coming in. A, look at the people who are coming in, make sure that they're the right people coming in. But B, it's under the umbrella of the whole cultural element of Australia. Is like, who are these people? That's one thing. The other thing is, are these people open to assimilating into the Australian culture? Do they speak English? All of these things. So I feel like the issue lies in the cultural element, which is, that's the gap. It's like, why aren't we proud to be Australian? What, like, that is the gap there. And it's like our government, I'm not seeing them promoting a nationalistic ideology, or like, it doesn't have to be a nationalistic ideology, but just at least like the whole culture of be proud to be Australian. Like, they're not even letting us wear our flags, you know. Like,
I'll interject there, right?
Yeah.
So nationalism in Australia is seen as a sin.
yes,
To the government, to the entities, the enterprises, whatever we want to call these things, right? So, I'm going to forget. I believe it's Victoria Police can't wear the Australian flag with the thin blue line.
Correct.
Patch.
Yeah. Yep.
Corrections aren't allowed to wear it. I believe New South Wales Police can't wear it as well.
They wear the LGBTQ
But they all can wear the flags. They can all wear the pins. They can all wear the Indigenous flag. Now, I have nothing against the Indigenous flag. There's a whole argument in the very far right of there should only be one flag. The Indigenous aren't allowed to have their own whatever. I don't buy into that. One of my good friends, he's Indigenous.
Yep.
And he's doing his absolute best to bridge that gap. Now, if you take their identity away by taking that flag away, you're never going to bridge that gap.
Yep.
So it's imperative that Australians, white Australians, people like you and I, whatever you want to call us, bridge the gap with the Indigenous, because together we are far stronger.
Yes, absolutely.
Our problem is the government every day of the week, not the person, right?
Yes.
But nationalism is actually starting to become a sin. You are a racist, you are a bigot, you are all of these negatives.
Why? But like, why are they doing that? And it's not limited to the Labor Party, I don't think. Like, maybe more so. Like, we've had liberal Labor constantly throughout the years.
I feel like the trajectory's led us to the same point.
Yes, that's right.
Look, why? I feel as though they want a weaker population. They want people who aren't proud of where they're from.
Yes.
Because they're easier to control. COVID is example A. You shut everyone down. You leave the bottle shops open. You close the gyms. You stop them from going to work. You end up with a docile alcoholic population that have no thought process of themselves.